Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As many people try to find ways to get health and vitality to be in their favor, especially in the older years, we try to move to things that maybe are a little less invasive, may take some time, but certainly garner the kind of results that we're looking for. On the program today, we're going to be joined with somebody with more than 43 years of training and 30 years of giving instruction in what is known as Tai Chi. You'll find out more about how this particular ancient Tibetan way is going to be able to do the very thing that you're looking for, which is definitely create energy, health, and longevity. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our special guest, Master Lama Rasaji. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, Daniel. How about yourself?
Well, I'm doing pretty good as well. This is really fascinating, the lineage there that you were teaching. I understand that you're one of very few in the world who actually are able to do this.
There's 36 Master Lamas in the world that are designated to different countries. 24 are connected to different countries. We have 12 that kind of float between one country and another and make it up. And I've been assigned North America now, and just happy to be able to be a part of your show today and share what little knowledge that I have.
What little knowledge he has after so many years. How did you get started with this?
It was kind of an interesting thing. I started out as a very sickly child and had bouts with asthma and kidney infection and began to have altered state experiences when I was very sickly as a child. I actually had 2 near-death experiences on the operating table in 1968, of which I actually met our Lama out of the body during this time. And then years later, in 1975, I met our Maha Lama Boyang in Washington Square in New York City and began to train with him in Washington Square 2 or 3 times a week for a period of about 3 years. And that's how I originally got connected to the art.
Now, what was your experience in the beginning of this? It's interesting when Westerners try to take on something that's basically an Eastern way, and they expect these results to happen right away, and they don't realize that there's time and patience and practice. It's more of the doing than the outcome. What was your experience like?
It was fascinating with me. As I was beginning to get more healthy, I was in New York City for the reason that I was, number one, already had a small background with martial arts and yoga, and I was being trained as a professional dancer in my teenage years. So the idea of another moving discipline kind of fed into me. But what was happening to me, I was amazed at how much it began to slow down everything so that the mind could begin to pick up its surroundings, not only outside and around me, but also in the body. I would remember asking my master Boyang different questions, and he would look to me for the first year, and his response, Daniel, was always the same. It was, Rasaji, get back to the body. Everything is hidden down inside the body. And so it was an amazing thing. And our system is something similar very much to the way I understand Master Suzuki teaches music. We kind of jump in and just actually start doing. And, I have viewed since beginning to teach since 1983 exactly what you're talking about. I kind of felt like that maybe I was somewhat of an Asian soul, and because of the martial art and yoga base, that I kind of felt like a fish in water, but most Westerners kind of have to think things through before they even stick a toe in the water. Mm-hmm. And over the years, one of the values that we do when we're instructing a new student is we do the exercises with them. Everything that we do, We're right there. We're not sitting on the side saying, do this, do that. We're actually jumping right in, and we're just kind of going along with them.
Do you have sometimes students who become a little impatient about the process and you say, look, just calm down?
Well, that's probably the key, right? It's we have found that the thing that's the most difficult, Daniel, for most Westerners is this concept of slowing down. This basic concept of allowing your spirit, mind, and body to do what we call push away from the table of life. And that is to be able to if the body was kind of like a manual car and you're asking them to downshift this car willingly, this seems to be the greatest sense of natural repel for most Westerners. If they usually go about 90 days or longer with training, it's usually because now they're giving themselves permission to slow down. It's very interesting. One of the most common maladies we've come across in the last 30-something years is that most people 50 and older are having a lot of difficulty with their rest cycle. And a lot to do with sleep, we have discovered, has very little to do with sleep. It still has to do with them feeling like they can accept this idea that when the cycles of the day change from solar to lunar, which happens about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, can they begin to embrace this concept of gradually going more within? So this is the most common thing that we are seeing, Daniel.
Now, it's funny because what do you think it is in the Western mindset that has us feeling that we need to be hurried, that if we don't, we somehow feel like we're going to just sink?
Yeah, it's an imbalance of this basic yin and yang cycle. It has so much to do with, we're driven to make money constantly. It's the energy drinks. When you look at the wave of energy drinks, for instance, that's come up in the last decade, it's the idea that this solar energy that starts hitting the body about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and then accelerates and peaks at about 9 or 10 o'clock, it's as if we could follow this young, aggressive, masculine solar energy all day long. And yet the lunar energy begins to move in about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and about 3 o'clock. So here we got all this business driven, capital driven, like I need to expand this yang system. So whether it's a Starbucks hit or whether it's some energy drink or whatever, they're feeling that at all cost to go out and make the almighty dollar, that they can do this. And the body begins to break down because there's two major vital energy cycles in the body. And the energy that travels up the spinal column is so much stimulated by the rising of the sun. We have what's considered the waterfall chi that goes down the front of the body that acupuncturists call the conceptional vessel. And over a period of time, we begin to discover that the yang qi, you cannot drink enough energy drinks to make up for the lack of the rest qi. So we have this saying, in order to go quickly, you need to first slow down.
Mm-hmm. Now, the advantages to this, a lot of people, if they allow the time to have the experience begin to emerge, is that it really places them in an infinite moment. Would that be the best way to put that?
Oh, absolutely. It's what Bo-Yang calls the expanded now, Daniel. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's all about, we all know, no matter what the metaphysical teachings or the all road lead to Rome syndrome, we're all looking to be in the omnipresent. And to expand that present, we actually refer to it sometimes as what do you do when you achieve balance? You learn to expand this balance, but you're totally right on target.
It's fascinating, too, because so many people try to find ways to improve their lives. They're always looking outward for all the answers and become disappointed when their expectations aren't met. And as you talked about earlier in the show, this is something where you're not looking outside, or as your master had said, just keep turning back into your body, that all the answers are there. And I think sometimes we look for things to be complicated. In other words, for something to be more valid, it has to be more complicated for us to solve the puzzle. But this isn't one of those things.
Exactly. You're again right, dead on. It's we say anything worth anything is based on the premise of truth, simplicity, and love. You know, God simplifies, men complicate. So as we become more in the divine order that we already are, we're simplifying our life. And, 80 to 90% of the new students' training is this idea that they're going to be practicing 20 to 40 minutes a day, learning how to connect with the chi. And people ask me a lot of times, Lama Rasaji, why does a private student stay with you for a decade or longer? I said, basically because I give homework and they do it. Mm-hmm. And if they don't do the homework, then it's not a lot that we can do, because they no longer now have the appreciation nor the understanding of how Spirit is transforming their life. So it is actually the going in order to go out first. And it's always the way.
Do you find, too, that people, especially such as yourself, learn to and begin to feel, sense, and go with the vibration of their intuition a lot more?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most best examples of this, Daniel, is I have a student that has been with me about 28 years now. He was a concert violinist, but he learned to play the violin, got a master's degree at a very advanced college, and he was taught to read music, study music, play literally at a concert level, was first chair of a major symphony, but he still played primarily with his left brain. Mm-hmm. After about 18 months of training and doing the Tai Chi Gung exercise, it began to activate his right intuitive brain. And the next thing that began to happen is he, for the first time, began to play music spontaneously. Years later, as his right and left hemisphere began to balance doing the exercises, he got to the point that he began to manifest music at a whole different arena. He could get into the energy field of a couple that he was designing to play a special piece of music for the couple, and he would record this special piece. And today, it's just amazing to watch what happened to this individual. I always tell my students, Daniel, that when they're doing their self-practice, keep some either recorded device handy or pencil and paper handy, because so much creativity is going to come out of you, and what we call the ahas of life are going to manifest. And when that moment happens, there's a good chance you're going to want to record them.
It's very exciting to realize that you can just slowly flick a switch like this and kind of be engaged in life to a level that it almost seems consistently miraculous. Has that been your experience?
It's been my experience. We wrote our first book called The Circle of Chi on basically, on an academia level, probably a 4th or 5th grade education. But what we did is that we put stuff in it that each paragraph is formed as a contemplation. The exercises with the book, what we call the home study course, they're designed literally to rhythmically begin to connect the vibration. There's an ancient Hindu tradition called Chanda, which means that you're probably familiar with. They go before a ritual and paint the forehead with 3 golden stripes and a magenta dot right between the root of the nose. We say that the spirit, mind, and body are one. So here we are, we're walking around in this hologram being that through Tai Chi Gung is becoming balanced, focused, and funneled. And over a period of months, you really see this about every 90 days with people, is that their being is becoming more funneled. And in the beginning, most people in most systems, they're looking at prayer, meditation, or contemplation as something to do separately. Go to a quiet room, do it on a secluded mountain. But eventually, you need to be able to center yourself and be in a sense of meditation when you're sitting across the table, basically getting ready to do a business deal in life. Because this is the age that we're in. We're in this age of movement, energy, and communication. Can you be still in the moment and without separating yourself from humanity?
Mm-hmm. You know, I was curious, too, as we have done segments on this particular subject about dimensions. What is your view from your experience about the third dimension as opposed to they're saying that we're moving into a fourth and a fifth dimension? What does the experience of this bring to something like that?
This is a very accurate statement. I mean, basically, we're in the root of the Tai Chi Gung system is basically from the City Yoga systems that's well over 5,000 years old. Our group organization has been around about 3,000 years, master mentoring to student. Also, the first Lama Bhoganasar from India basically spent 50 years taking his simple yoga into nature with the understanding that if I moved and breathed in a certain way, that I could tap the chi of the trees, or I could tap the chi of the Yangtze River in China. The concept of is that there is a pebble that, as we know, that hits the water, and that ripple has about a 24,000-year ripple on the outward sense, and then a 24,000-year ripple on the return sense. Depending on who you talk to, all the movements on the earth are kind of affirming that we're in that return cycle. And so we're going back to where the pebble is basically returning. What's happening is that there's an energy field now that's bombarding the atmosphere, and that same field that is creating maladies with certain human beings is trying to change things in their glands, change things in their chakras, and speeding things up. One of the most important, significant things that needs to happen in this transition from a third dimension to a more fourth dimensional vibration, Daniel, is that grounding and centering. I mean, you look at a battery on a car today. You have the red cable and you have the black cable. Well, they equally need to be strengthened, because here's what's happening to people's central nervous systems now. It's kind of like if I was looking at it from electricity point of view. In residential, you'll have like your 110 wattage, but the commercial grade is like a 220 wattage. We are being taken from a 110 wattage into a 220 wattage. When that happens, do you have the proper grounding? Are your organs now that were only used for many years to just be a combustible engine of breaking down basic protein and food, can they be used similarly as a second endocrine gland system? Because we are going through transformation on the planet, and for this reason was one of the reasons that Tai Chi Gung came into being.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's also was a fascinating subject because you hear more consistently, and you just said the same thing about speeding up. And
right.
It's really interesting about that because going into the realm of the attraction law, so to speak, is you have a lot of people that go after something like that, you know, and they think, well, I'm thinking, you know, that this is what I want, but why am I getting all this? Well, what are you thinking between those thoughts really becomes the question, because you're attracting everything to you that you're thinking. And the funny thing about it is that it's happening faster, you know, that you might think a particular thought or have a desire, and it just seems to show up faster than ever before. And you kind of wonder, what kind of a vibration are we in here?
Well, absolutely both things you said, Daniel, is right on target. And we have what we call the mental affirmation system, but we also have a physical affirmation system. If you looked at the whole science of feng shui in itself and understood the building and arranging of things to induce qi, Tai Chi Gung is kind of the physical feng shui, if you will. One of the things that happens is if your actions are in opposition of the thought process of the expectancy of any creation that you want to manifest in your life, then you have a metaphysical tug of war. So what begins to happen is the student begins to synchronize with the Tai Chi Gung exercise and understands what they clearly want. Then these layers, these inner and outer bodies and inner and outer dimensions. See, here's the concept. Somebody, example, wants something today. They're the sun of their solar system, of the things that are coming to them. They're orbiting around them. What decides when that planet is going to arrive is when the alignment of the mental, emotional, and physical things are in alignment. And that's basically pure law of attraction.
I thought I'd bring that up because I felt that law of attraction was better than a lot of what's being peddled out there today.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
Because I'll give you a good example. I remember coming across a statement in a book, and it was funny because I went, well, I never heard of this guy before. So I followed that to go and find the book that was mentioned, and it goes back to about the 1940s, I think. And I was able to actually go further back than that to the early part of the 1900s, and it was, I guess, Christian Science is what it was. And I thought, it's fascinating what I'm reading from these people from this point of view because from my experience, Christians of today don't talk or act anything like this, And I found what they were saying was so powerful, and they were talking about the law of attraction even back then. But because of removing all the political ways of doing things, they had a very direct message about the whole thing, and I began to see, well, the law of attraction says you get everything that you vibrate out there that you want, but you got to be careful about what it is, and you can see how having a system of being able to ground yourself to get clear, and open about this would be very necessary. It got to a point where I began to understand, for instance, what the key to meditation really was is just clearing the mind from all the clutter so that you can focus when you need to move into the direction or attract the kind of experiences you would like to have in your life.
Yes, this is, again, Daniel, it's a very good insight on yourself, but Tai Chi Gung basically totally supports this premise. When we look at prayer, meditation, and contemplation, the basic seed is prayer basically means to ask. We ask the student, what are you asking for? Because if you're not clear, then everybody else through you, from Fox News to CNN, maybe they're asking and creating through you and you don't realize it because you're not wanting to take conscious responsibility. Number two, meditation, basic premise, means to listen. What are you listening to? As you said, if it's all scattered frequencies, how can you really hear something? When I was on a mountaintop for 45 days in meditation at the end of my first year in Tibet, not allowed to see another human, I remember asking Bo Yang, I said, well, when will I know that my meditation is deep? And he said, Rasaji, when you're able to hear the blood flow. Keep going until you can hear nothing else but your blood flow. Well, it was about the 28th day of a 45-day meditation that I had finally cleared out. I thought I had really accomplished something amazing. It sounded just like a beautiful waterfall. But I remember 6 months after being back home from Tibet, I was in New York City, and the Lama sent me a message. He says, I want you to go to Broadway and 42nd Street on a Friday afternoon, every Friday, where over 100,000 people walk by, and says, I want you to sit down and see, can you hear your blood flow with all these other people walking around?
Wow.
So that took about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it finally happened is that I finally embraced what it meant to push away from the table of life. That I knew that you could take yourself into a vortex and that you could be there, and that this concept of centering was true. And the last thing that I was taught was contemplation. And contemplation, seed thought, means to become. What to become? Let's take a couple that's in marriage or a significant other. And their more sometimes focuses on their differences than their likes. And that quickly changes if they respect the divinity equally within each other and realize why they walked down the aisle in the first place. Because the greatest thing that can happen between a couple is the purest concept of contemplation. It means when I become you and you become me, then we really have something that is evolving into really what human beings are supposed to be on this great planet.
Which is what specifically? Sometimes the listener might listen and think, well, okay, I think I heard what he said, but I'm not sure that I understand what he said.
Well, here's the thing. Let me give you an idea. I remember that I was in a relationship once, and I was not giving this lady exactly, I felt, what she needed, and I was putting up a prejudgment. Every time that something came up, it was a previous event or a previous situation. I was looking through it from that past stained glass, so to speak. Well, one day, my thinking was, as I'm going to put the image of one of my yoga masters or Tai Chi Gung masters, and I thought about that. I didn't say anything and thought anything. I remember one day I was sitting at the edge of the bed, and she had just walked out the shower, and she went to throw her hair back. And the moment she threw her hair back, my mind fixated on her, and she was no longer this person that I seemed to prejudge all the time. She had now became my yoga master. And my mind would not unfix this. I knew at that moment that I had learned this small thing that I was trying to do. I was, for the first time after a 7-year relationship, reflecting on the divinity in this being now. And now, from that point on, I was allowing the divinity to come outside of her, and now I'm not communicating with her with this prejudgment stained glass any longer.
Mm-hmm. And that makes things such a wonderful way, an aspect of getting up in the morning so, delightful is when you can begin to see that in people. I remember on the program having call it a social expert, if you will, but we got into the conversation about, how do you deal with difficult people that you work with? And the fact is for a lot of people, this is 8 or 10 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week. So you're really living with these people. The fact is, though, the people that you don't get along with tend to be the aspects of you that you don't get along with. And sometimes as you talk about something like this, and people may listen and they chime in and they have opinions about this, well, you're trying to say that this person is bringing me my stuff. Well, that really depends on how much emotionally you're charged by it. How often do you talk about these people, so forth and so on. And I remember, just as you were talking about here earlier, a time when I was in an industry where you serve people, and I remember this couple coming in, and these other servers, for instance, saying, well, these people are this, and this has been my experience, so forth and so on. And I remember feeling and actually having an anticipation of carrying that prejudice into this relationship with these people that I had to take care of for the time they were there. And then I remember there was sort of a voice that came in and said, calm down and see this experience as it really is, instead of the way they told you it was in their experience. And as I did, I didn't experience any of the kind of nonsense they were talking about. They were actually a very delightful, warm, cheerful, happy, friendly couple. And, they started coming back fairly regularly, and they said, it's been one of the most pleasurable experiences to come in here. We actually look forward to it, and they started bringing friends in. And it made me realize that, how often do we, as you were mentioning earlier, go into a new relationship with someone or a group of people or even people at work, and we have these preconceived notions about who they are, which can really affect a relationship, especially the way your mood is at a day of work.
Well, absolutely. And that was some great insight on your part, Daniel, because you really, when you look at, the soul, we're coming to this earth, we're this spirit having this physical experience. And all things that are going on are divided into all kind of relationships. There's human relationships, there's relationships to the plant kingdom, to the animal kingdom. There's the relationship that we're having with our mind periodically. There's the relationship or we're having with our breathing. Are we breathing very good at all? Is it just oxygen? Are we breathing chi, the vital energy? So we're having this. But in the midst of us all is that the soul, the sharat, it's moving and it's being. And it kind of has this agreement. I'm choosing this family. I'm choosing this body. And I've got something that's very important that I want to share that's a reflection of the divine. If I pick up my orders and my papers and fulfill what the agreement is with my soul when I come in, I will not stop until it's probably worldly proportion and has the impact for thousands of possibly millions of people. The other thing that's imprinted in the soul is what age that we are in right now. So we're in this age of energy and communication that we spoke of early. We're making the return flow back to where the pebble was originally dropped. So there's a collective consciousness at play in regards to what our mission is in this lifetime. Now, person comes in because of free will and whatever, they can do whatever they want. They can drink enough alcohol, they can take enough drugs, they can hear enough nonsense and chatter that they're never in touch with the sharat, the soul, like you were, which you just previously described. Mm-hmm. When you can be clear enough to hear that small voice that says, why don't you just experience this experience, Rasaji or Daniel, like it's the first experience that you've ever had. Mm-hmm. Tai Chi Gung, we call that enlightenment. we call that is the moment of enlightenment when you can totally recognize that being and bring that being forward. You'll find this really funny. The first time that I really remember that happening was right before I entered my Tai Chi Gung training. I was actually dancing on stage, and something inside of me was fighting just letting go and embracing that feeling. And I remember it was like throwing a switch on the inside, and I threw that switch. And my dancing career at that point was never the same after that switch. And it was actually having that experience, throwing the switch, that when I showed up in Washington Square in 19 75, and I reached out my hand to Mahalama Boyang, and he looked at me, and that's where I received my name Rasaji, which means God's joy in Sanskrit. He said, "What took you so long?"
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. You know, that was it, and it was like, oh my goodness.
Fascinating stuff here. Now, is there a website people can find out more about your work?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's Rasaji.com, RASAJI.com. And if they decide they want to join our email for free, we'll initially send them 45 days of free training. And then they can take a look at us. They can actually, with the exercises that we're sending them, the video links, they can practice them. They can actually begin to feel the chi and feel what it's like to become a little balanced and calm. And then down the road, they can decide if they want to get more involved with us. We have online courses that we're doing. I'm touring. They can click on our event page and see what we're going to be. We're in Jacksonville, Florida in April. We're in Portland in May, and be back in Dallas, Texas in June. So we're having a good time, enjoying sharing with people.
Well, I really enjoyed having you on the program today. It's so fascinating when you get to that knowing, as I was suggesting earlier. It isn't an understanding anymore. It's a knowing, and you realize there's more work to do, but now that you know, it makes the work all that more exciting to pursue. You know, this is certainly one of those really marvelous tools that can help people to do that.
Well, I've enjoyed being on your show with you and Joy, and I've had several people. I take it that we're recording, and people will be able to come to your website and be able to listen to the show. I know there's a lot of interest out there, and I really appreciate you having me on, Daniel. You've been a great host and some wonderful questions.
Well, you know, a great host only comes from having great guests. Thank you again for joining us on the program. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Take care, and God bless. Bye-bye.
You bet. And you can find out more. Also visit us at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50, and we'll have a hot link there for you as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.